call to order. Approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion? Bill?
I move approval of the minutes for the, I don't know the date of the last meeting.
Okay.
Second.
A second by D. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Same saying no. Motion carries. Finance, approval of the disbursements.
One thing
Bill?
before the motion, I
sorry.
just wanted,
Steve, go ahead.
just wanted to make mention that I included, since we're in July, both fiscal years. We concluded fiscal year 19, but it is not closed out. So that will, more information and final closeout will be forthcoming, as it always is with these matters. But I wanted to, at least in this meeting, not confuse you, but in this packet, I provided you the printout for fiscal year 19 as well as fiscal year 20, which we're just barely in. And so that's why there's two. They're not both the same.
Bill?
Sure,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
Steve.
No, I was just going to also mention that, there's some really good signs to look forward to, as I've alluded to in the past for fiscal year 20. And one of those two new places that have just opened are reportedly doing very well, both Taste of Ethiopia and Bud's Skyline Riverview, sorry. And so just today we received, we get 2.5% of gross sales because of the land lease that we have with Bud's. And so their June represented for us a check today of almost $3,400. And just to give you some comparison, if that is sustained, that approaches almost 4 times of what we would have seen in the last few years from previous tenants there. And so I just want to give you a little bit of that backdrop because, we wish them all very well, but that's a good sign and not included in the fiscal year 20 budget. We would only be including what has happened in the past is how I really govern that. So wanted you to, be aware of that.
Also, I see this check for $12,273.
Sure, I can address that now since it's a financial matter, but that's what you see under staff report for Peterson Trust. But let me explain that as far as I know it, and I've included the letter from Wells Fargo as well, because one day I got both those pieces of mail in the same mail cycle, and it appears from my reading the letter that there was from the period of 2008 through 2018, Wells Fargo did not distribute. We get an annual distribution. We're one of the beneficiaries from this years old trust. We're one of 6. And we should have been receiving 5%. We were receiving 4.5 according to the letter. That translates, I think, with interest to this check, which is unexpected, unbudgeted, and $12,000. What is it? $273.99, I think. And so that was more than a bit of good news after we have forgiven some rent and coming out of fiscal year 19 a little under budget. I think 20 is going to be a much better year.
Carl?
I read that letter. I didn't understand that there was interest involved in that. I thought it was just a repayment of withheld monies. Wells Fargo's letter didn't say they were paying us any interest, unless I skipped over that.
And maybe I assumed.
I didn't think they were paying us any interest on it. But it is like found money. I certainly grant you that, and certainly welcome.
Yep.
Steve, that the Skyline is, they own the building, we own the land, right?
Repeat. I think you got it right, but repeat that, please.
We own the land and they own the building.
Yes, and its contents.
And therefore, the income is based solely on some percentage of gross.
Yeah, so we are in a long-term lease that they bought from, we were in for, like, it's a 20-year lease that went through the city council from previous ownership. When they bought the building and the contents privately, we provided for the assignment of the lease as well. And what it's stair steps. It started out at 2% the first years 1 through 4. We're in year 5 of this agreement. So 5 through 8, it's 2.5%, and then it will go up to 3%. And so on for the next few years. And it's based off of gross sales, and by law, that cannot include alcohol. So it's based off of, non-alcoholic beverages and food, gross sales.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a motion to approve the disbursements?
So moved.
Carl made the motion, Bill seconded it. Any discussion or questions, further questions for Steve? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign, nay. Motion carries. Steve, leases?
I feel like I go to different camera angles here. So this has been a long time coming, but is exciting news nonetheless, I think. This lease agreement is with Visit Quad Cities, and first Dave Harrell and Molly Otting Carlson could not be here tonight. They're actually both in St. Louis, but I didn't want to hold up this lease any longer. You all have seen it originally, or a draft of it originally, and then we had the springtime events that we've had. But what I wanted to bring before you for your action and consideration tonight is their reoccupancy. They're going into the main level of the Union Station, and so what's happening first, or kind of on a parallel track, if you will, is we've finished with the cleanup, as I've reported in the past, and we're heading out to bid for the restoration. So we're going after through purchasing a general contractor that will have a number of items from drywall to painting to some electrical, that kind of stuff. And so that's heading out the door. But parallel, Visit Quad Cities, who's going to be responsible for, sort of the new contents and the new feel and look beyond the walls, if you will. They're working with Edwards Creative, and will be back, I think, to show us what they've come up with. They'll be excited about that for some feedback, probably at the next meeting or two. But they will be later this fall, in all likelihood, ready to move in, when is a little less busy time period for them, but before winter, certainly. And so it'll be nice to have that now truly fully occupied and ready to go with the visitors as a visitor center as it's intended. I think the only real major change is that they want to make use of that one, we call it a community room, but it's a room outside of, you see it on the map, I outlined it with a different color, but I see no problem with that. We have maybe a meeting or two a month from different groups, but honestly, the flood wrecked the seating in there, the chairs and the tables, and so we wouldn't really be using it in that same way in all likelihood anyway. And so their idea, I don't yet know, but I think it will be very nice. They have visions of making this not just sort of a static visitor center, but something fun and a place that people will want to utilize frequently. So beyond that, I'm happy to take any questions about it. It's a nearly 3-year, so I think that's a good thing too, trying to run concurrently with our fiscal years. And I would say that we have this starting as of rent starting as of September 1. If by chance we are still not ready, it's only, if we have to punt for a month, I assume we're all fine with that. If we're not ready to give it over, but again, I didn't want to be the holdup from a lease perspective in the meantime. So all things are moving forward, both interior as well as exterior, and then with them as tenants. So.
Bill?
Yes, this is the same group as the Visitors and Convention Bureau, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were called this Quad Cities Convention and Visitors Bureau. They now go by Visit Quad Cities.
Oh, they do? Oh, okay, thanks.
Kind of an effort of a new branding.
Carl?
Will we change? Are we going to change the sign? The sign's still. It's a good thing we left the sign up, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't talked to them about it, perhaps.
We sent out an RFP last time, as I recall, to asphalt the brick parking lot that's at the south side of the building. Is that what we're doing?
Actually, what the RFP was for was to identify a firm, a architectural and engineering firm, to provide plans about what to do down out there. But you're right that we don't yet know the eventual or full build out of what the plan might call for. But it's something to repair what damage was caused,
Correct.
and then to fortify it so that in the future HESCOs could be built there, but that it also looks and keeps with the historic and the beautification of that area. And so I don't yet know, but actually I asked Dee to serve along with a couple other staff on reviewing the 7 respondents to that RFP, and we're going to interview the top 3 from the initial review of those next week. And once we pick said firm, then we will begin to work with them on identifying likely 2 plans, with our feedback, and ultimately that's a council decision. But I hope that we are able to do so before winter. We're trying to move some things along here prior to the first snowfall.
Will that be funded by the CIP, by the capital
Well, it
improvement?
could be. It's remains to be seen. It still could be considered flood, or
Okay.
Okay,
But not RIC, not
correct.
Riverfront
That
Improvement
is
Commission.
correct. But we're involved,
We're involved,
definitely.
but not as a funder.
Correct.
Thank you.
Dee?
Yeah. I had the pleasure of reading, I think, all of the submittals, and all of the firms are approaching it with the idea that it would be an area that would blend in with the Union Station and would not just be asphalt, it would not just be concrete. I mean, they have landscape architects. There are a couple of firms, I don't know if one of them made the cut, that really talked about where the HESCO barriers would go, and maybe using bentonite in the soils there to solidify the soil underneath. So I mean, the approaches were what I would call not just repair, but also mitigation. And I think we need to look. They also looked and said, "Hey, you have a raised railroad track, and there's some other things happening here that we have to make this all work with." So, I think
For example, drainage.
yeah, absolutely. The drainage is a problem. And so I think this is an opportunity for this firm to kind of lay out what needs to be done. And then that'll also give us an idea of what's flood damage and then what is maybe railroad costs, because we can't use the back exactly how we did before, and we might need more paving or some walkways, obviously, and some other things. So I think we should be, I mean, I know maybe the city council approves this. I think this is, though, when they get this plan done, this body should be looking at it and deciding that's what we want to do.
Full intention. Well, we always need to go through purchasing. So when you say we do, yes, we're party to this. The city issued the RFP, but we will review it here, and then so will city council.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Do we have a motion to accept?
Do you want to approve on the lease then?
Yeah, it's an action plan. It's section.
I'll move the lease.
Second?
Second.
Karen, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Steve, the next one's Freight House.
Yes, at this point, I would love to introduce to you again Lori Ambrose Beeman, who is the executive director of the Freight House Farmers Market. And she is going to probably, if I know Lori, she's going to give you a nice little update, not only on the indoor market plan that's emerging, but also probably invite you to a number of things that are upcoming. So
I think
take it
Steve's
away.
trying to say I'm a little wordy, but well, thank you for allowing me to come in front of you and talk to you a little bit about what's happening at the Freight House Farmers Market. I'm going to take a second and introduce Ben Florence, who's with me tonight. And Ben is our intern this summer, and he's also an AmeriCorps volunteer. So we feel very fortunate to have Ben and one other AmeriCorps volunteer, which has really been nice for us to be able to add to an unexistent staffing. So it's been very nice for me. So just a quick overview before we get to the indoor. I mean, it's been a very challenging year for us at the farmers market, like it has been for everybody else. But we feel so unbelievably fortunate that we've been able to kind of rise above. We relocated and kind of kept going business as usual through the whole flood. And not that it hasn't, didn't impact us, and you lose a lot of vendors and you lose a lot of customers through those few months. But, as soon as we got back down to the market, they were all right back to coming every Saturday. I think last 2 Saturdays ago, I took the time to do the metrics for the numbers that were in the market on that Saturday. And it looked like we were over 11,000 for a Saturday at the market. So, we're staying pretty steady at our numbers. So even this brutally hot Saturday, we had a great crowd that came in. They came in early and they got out, but they were there. So so we're doing something right. People are coming down and they love the market. We're doing a lot of special events, and we've really this year done a lot of partnerships where we've really reached out and done a lot of partnerships within the community at the market. We had a really great Earth Day event, and we probably had 20 different groups from around the Quad Cities involved in putting that on with us. Our Chris Kindle market, we reach out and we have a number of different organizations in the market. We did, and with Ben was the leader of our Tied Together event, which was also a fundraiser for the Have Life Foundation. So we're really finding that part of our mission is not just to be a farmer's market. I mean, that's a big part, but we also know that it's important for us to reach out into the community and educate. We're working up with the Stepping Stone School program this summer up at Lincoln School, and we're teaching the kids about fresh local produce. And our farmers have been wonderful about donating fresh produce that we take up, and we're allowing these kids to shop a farmer's market there and go home with fresh produce that we've taught them different ways to cook it and eat it, and that it's really simple and good for you. So we really, as we grow, that's a big part of our growth, is that outreach. So that brings us to kind of what I came here to talk to you about a little bit, was the indoor market that we're lucky enough to get a grant through the SCRA to help us redesign that indoor market. So that becomes our anchor. Right now, the outdoor market is the anchor. And we have this incredible space here that we haven't been utilizing to its fullest, and we really want it to be focusing on the food. And so part of that is when you work with kind of a vendor-run market, it is that we have to put it together and convince them that this is the right direction to go. So they were able to give us a really nice grant that we were able to go to Conceptual Design, who is working with us to redesign the inside for better flow, to give us better usage and for more vendors within the space that we have. I mean, it is a small area for what we would eventually love to do, but I believe this is a great start for us. So we should be able to get the flow working, get some public space in there, get some ability to have a small area that we can do some classes and we can continue all year round to educate and teach and to bring people down to the market. And when we bring them in, it just helps everybody. I mean, when you can bring in 10 to 11,000 people on a Saturday, probably 15,000 for a week when you consider our Sunday and Wednesday markets. I mean, that really buoys the economy for all those other restaurants and the brewery that are right down there. So we want to keep it going all year round. I know, Dee, you're a big farmers market shopper, and I know you sat with us as we went through our strategic plan, and that was a big part of it was that indoor market. So, so once we've got the plan, of course, the next step is financing it, and we hope to have that in line so we can start going out and hopefully getting some more grants and monies to help. But this is that first step as we talk about what our plan is, our growth of the market, and how we can expand. I know last time I was here, I talked about the deck area, that maybe at some point we'd love to be able to enclose that or expand that way. You know, this is the big center point for that expansion. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about and give you kind of an update. If you have any questions,
Any
I'd love
questions?
to.
Bill?
Yeah, the indoor space, are you talking about from the west end all the way up to, say, where the Front Street Brewery
It's where
has?
the deli, the fresh deli. We are from the fresh deli to the
To the end.
west door.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know how many square feet that is. Yeah. 19,000. Yeah, 19,000 square feet maybe. So, but it's got its limitations as it sits now, but I think the plan that we're seeing is pretty exciting. We're very excited to move forward.
And the grant you've already received was just to get the
design
plans?
work.
The design work,
It's the
okay.
design work, the layout. Included in that was to look at the outside facade as well, and how we can make that look more inviting and less like a black cave, which it has. I mean, we added some vinyl that I think it's helped, but you know, it's kind of bringing it into the, you know, to where it needs to be. You know, we've got all the pieces in place to make this very successful, except for a flawed design and plan, which we're working on. You know, I think that's the key.
Thank you.
All right.
Next is the Canadian Pacific Railroad crossing discussion. Dee, do you want to bring us up to date from the last meeting?
Well, I actually, in our minutes, we are approving the minutes of that committee, so that's how you are going to be reading it going forward too. So you actually are seeing maybe what we've been doing. At the last meeting, Zach, who's in the back there, and I'm not sure if he's prepared to do anything tonight, but showed some changes to Gain Street, where we talked about it being a pedestrian-only crossing, and a different way, especially where it is now, is if you have any kind of disability, motor disability, you really can't get to the baseball stadium. And even if you're on the south side of the track, the plaza is very long. There are very few spaces there, so you would have to change those all out and mostly make those all handicap spaces. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So Zach did a kind of a modeling. I wouldn't say it's total, but just give us an idea of what that would look like, and then what it would look like to open up, let's make sure I got it, Warren Street, which is now not a street, and it doesn't go to the riverfront. So that would allow a street to go into the park that has access from all sides, where Gaines is just a three-way street. That was not accepted at first by the railroad, but after they've started doing a little bit of a cost analysis, they're seeing that financially there's some ability that is not going to be, that's not going to be a big deal, actually, maybe. What they want is another crossing to close. And as we were looking at what that could be, there is I think we talked about this last time, there is a crossing at what I'm calling Carey Street, but it's not. It's offset to the street. There's a private crossing, though it's public and it belongs to the city, but it's not used as a street going into the marina, and that can be reworked. So we are discussing with them if that would be the trade-off between opening Warren off or not. So this is all in the very much of a discussion mode. I think the other thing that the committee kind of talked to the staff about is, we need to explore all of this and then get down to what's realistic and what it all costs and what damages that have occurred in spite of just being able to get the crossings to work. What other things are happening here that are going to cost the city money to bring it to where we had it before? So they're working on that. So if you read that in the minutes, I think we spent some time talking about that. So while I know the staff wants to get this moving and some things done, we also have this second thing to look at as what's really going on here. I think the last one that maybe is of significance is that to make the crossing for vehicles and core vehicles to the dam not take up a lot of the park that we would like to design. There was a trade between Perry and Pershing, which, right? Am I got this right? Pershing would open up to street traffic and
Zach's gonna help you talk.
yeah, Perry would close. Yeah. Yeah, I'm taking it. I should have had you prepared. Sorry.
Yeah, I was out of town last week, so I'm still in vacation mode. The
Okay.
reentry. Zach Peterson, landscape architect, Public Works. This thing on? I don't know. Whatever. Well, as Dee mentioned, there are certain things that are being discussed right now. These are all discussions. These aren't necessarily commitments, but as Dee mentioned, this notion of the way Perry Street sits right now, and if you visited, had time to walk the site, if you haven't, I recommend taking a look. The grade from the back of curb getting up to that railroad track will not work with what we have under contract for our first phase of Main Street Landing. So the thought being that was the low-hanging fruit as far as eliminating a crossing, or actually in this case it's shifting it to actually Pershing. So what that means is next door immediately to the east of our new development is what's known as the CBQ lot, and it's got a weird configuration in itself, but the thought being if we don't have to make up that grade, we bring the grade back down to where it is, then we can pursue and complete our existing construction on site there. And the opportunity presents itself to, from Perry Street basically, due to that weird configuration, running an access road up from Perry to the top of the crossing where Pershing comes through. So from there, trucks will be able to access, get across the railroad tracks, and access Lock and Dam 15. So for thinking a step ahead for our Riverfront plans, that really frees up all of that space where previously we had to have at least a 20-foot easement to the Corps of Engineers to access the dam. So that's 20 foot of real estate that now we have for park improvements. And we don't have, they were showing us a turnaround, a vehicular turnaround, where a semi-truck would pull pretty much all the way forward to the riverfront, and that would disrupt the continuity of any kind of future riverfront plan. So we felt that this was a good, I guess the backing up, are we going to be entirely happy with what comes with this? I probably know is the answer to that, but as far as negotiating good faith and making lemonade out of the lemons, this was a solution that was receptive by Canadian Pacific and recently confirmed by the Corps of Engineers that it's worth pursuing. So we would at least have that direction going forward. We could address river heritage as well.
Yeah, if you can. I think that actually, that diagram too is in our package. So when you get to that, we could look at that diagram. Go ahead.
Do you have any questions on that?
Bill?
I understand the railroad's incentive and safety and, you know, and the number of times you can blow their horn as they go through town. But I'm curious as to whether there's a financial incentive to the railroad to eliminate the crossing. And if the elimination of the crossing by the federal rail system or by the Department of Transportation gives the railroad some other incentive besides just the safety, that there might be a financial incentive to them to do that.
Well, we're trading. We're not eliminating. So we're opening up one and closing one. So there is some federal regulation that talks about limiting, downsizing, not have as many crossings. And so they've used that with us as a reason why another crossing's not a good idea. But they have been discussing with staff the idea of trading. So, I mean, that is on the table.
Carl?
Thank you. So that the Perry Street crossing would be gone, and it would be a Pershing Street crossing further upstream towards the dam.
Then the thought being where that access road would make it up to that grade from
Right.
Perry. Then
Now, would that
it
really
has to
be a
in-
public access, or would that
Correct.
just, it would?
Yeah.
So it's not just limited to Corps of
No, no,
Engineers?
And that's one of the benefits to it is roughly that little parking lot that's on the other side.
Right.
In
The other end of CB&Q,
What's that? Yeah.
at the other end
on
of
the
our,
south side of the tracks.
on the south side of the
Will
track.
still be accessible to the public past this juncture. Yeah, right by the little fishing area. It'll be elevated to where we can ensure that trucks can maneuver, not get hung up on the vertical curve or bottom out on it. But that's one of the.
So I just want to clarify that in my own
Yes.
mind. Could we move to Warren Street mentally just for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to, because Warren Street, north of River Drive, is a disaster. It's not the most pleasant street to drive on if you're going north from River Drive, certainly by the time you get to 3rd Street. But you're going to bring stadium traffic and all that traffic through there. We're also going to be losing a significant parking, which is now adjacent to our skate park, will be consumed by the road.
One bay of, well, there's 3 bays right now of parking.
Yeah.
One bay will become the road, and the other 2 will still be intact. So it's debatable. I don't think I've ever seen that full. Maybe you have. I don't know. But yes, there will be parking loss associated with that.
We'll add it to the damages, Dee. We'll just add it to the damages. Okay.
Well,
But
that's
it's
the
very
point.
expensive parking that we're talking about.
What really
Very
it does,
valuable
it,
parking.
it limits it limits the addition that you might want to put on the building.
That's
'Cause you'd
quite
have
true.
You'd have a street.
Right.
So that is, to me, the biggest con. The upside, though, is it gives you another entrance into that large park besides just Marquette Street.
So if I can tag on to that, I mean, one of the problems we've had with Centennial Park and its development is the lack of, what am I trying to say? It's isolation between this north half and south half. So with this configuration, in a sense, we've created a brand new gateway into Centennial Park and tied all of our features that we developed on the north side, the basketball courts, the skate park, and all that, to where you can access and not have that disruption of flow to the south.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, actually, I think, I mean, when we had that aha moment of moving it, I think it's going to benefit.
From a traffic perspective, somebody arriving to the ballpark, living in Illinois, it's 2 easy rights and you're out on the Centennial Bridge. So that's an incentive there from game day flow. Also, you've seen the concept that I showed previously about this one contiguous parking lot, maximizing that area between River's Edge and the Freight House is now in play now to make it one giant amenity area.
I just wanted to bring attention to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
you speaking to it.
Uh-huh.
And you want to go on
Yeah, so you can see the concepts that were presented before about the railroad proposing an access drive going all the way to hit that intersection at Fourth. So I think when we discussed the Pershing concept, it kind of got their engineers, their hamsters going in their brains about, is there a way of preserving the existing river heritage entrance? So what's being proposed there came in at the 10th hour. We obviously, from a staff perspective, had some big concerns about traffic at that intersection to Fourth at River Drive. It doesn't jive well with the railroad track, the one-way system there. So what they came back with and proposed is actually leaving the well, we came back with them saying, can you put a hole in their previous wall, and they couldn't commit to that. They didn't know when that's going to be funded. They're saying funding. It's a future project, so they were uncomfortable with that. But so what they came back with was more or less, and lack of a better term, an off-ramp. So if you're heading eastbound on River Drive, you'll be able to exit River Drive and go up to match that grade to get in exactly where we're at right now. And then likewise, leaving the park, it would be almost a deceleration ramp to get back down onto River Drive.
That's being shown at the top of this page.
Yeah.
Is that what that's supposed to be? Is that its little?
Yeah, this would be.
Yes.
Riverside.
I see that, and then that's your little off ramp. Is that little?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty long. It's long, 'cause you
Yeah.
gotta get up to grade.
They obviously have concerns, as we do, about the vertical curves and larger vehicles being in there, like a fire truck and those kind of things. I don't think there's necessarily need to have a semi-truck in River Heritage Park, but at least having an emergency vehicle like a fire truck being able to access is worthwhile.
Kelly? Kelly's next.
Excuse me. I'm
So,
sorry.
so Zach, this is their new proposal that they came back with,
Correct. So
and do you feel pretty good about this?
the right in, the right out works. I think it's one of those things that we'll have to give up in order to keep that location. From the master plan perspective, that's where we want the entrance. It frees up the large grand lawn amenity area to where we don't have that space taken up by an access road. So it's beneficial from that standpoint. Entering the park, the right in, right out, obviously, is if we could have to where you could access it heading eastbound on River Drive, or sorry, westbound on River Drive, that'd be preferred. But if this is a concession we have to make, I think there's enough maneuverability to where you can get to the Fourth Street and take a left and head westbound. So for
From your
those-
perspective, I guess maybe my biggest question is, do you feel like this preserves the investment that's already been made by the city?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Getting to it's going to be a little bit more complex, but yeah, I mean, a lot of master planning and a lot of thought went into it for the overall character of the site, and this will preserve our existing master plan, independent of the extra room. If we're doing First Bridge, getting up that extra 2 feet, which equates to 30 plus extra linear feet of ramp that we have to get up there now, but that's another day.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, stay tuned.
Thank you. Steve? Strategic planning?
Well, I keep that on there, but honestly, again, the strategic planning work group, that's kind of what's been going on here over the last few months. So I would like to talk a little bit more about go into the staff report if I could. The first item, we talked about the Peterson Trust, but item B, the August 4th appreciation event, I think I made mention at the last meeting about this, but we've now solidified this on Sunday, and you're all invited. Sunday, August 4th, there'll be an event at the farmer's market, actually. Lori to the rescue again. We are going to have live music. She's going to have the market's open from 10 to 2 every Sunday, but we'll have petting zoo, and the whole idea here is kind of reaching out to city staff that as an appreciation event specifically from those businesses that occupy in and around the Freight House. And so we wanted to thank them, and so we're kind of roasting a hog and offering the staff and their families a sandwich, if you will, something to eat and a good time. And we will also be accepting donations for flood relief if the public is interested in that as well. And so I just wanted to, the flyer I attached is really for the internal audience, but I wanted you to, I wanted you to see the details related to the event, which we're pushing out there publicly as well. So, so hope to see you all there. Let me know if you want a sandwich. Also, we worked with the Quad Cities Inn Fishermen Club to place handrails, ADA compliant handrails at the Marquette Street landing. So they paid for the purchase of those, and we, using Reed Swenson, who manages our boat docks there, already installed them. And so I wanted to let you know that would mounted to a little bit over $600 that we worked out a little agreement donation with or from the Inn Fishermen Club. Wanted to thank Brianna and her team because we have been working at the Freight House on placing some mulch around the front facade that all washed away to likely Buffalo and beyond during the flood. But we got some really nice quality wood chip mulch and have spent the last couple of weeks spreading it, and we'll wind that up here later this week. Wanted to make mention at the next meeting in August, we will be having a presentation, this should excite all of you, from the Corps of Engineers about the Credit Island Slough. There's a report actually, Kathy was here, but Dee and Kathy have forwarded, and we've invited an individual with the Corps to come and present that particular, I'd call it, is it safe to say a report? I don't know, a preliminary look at the causeway. Many of us are interested in that, and so I think this is feels like leading back to the strategic planning initiative, the beginning of our River West part or component of the strategic plan. And so that will be a presentation at the August meeting, and then we'll obviously move forward from there. Sure.
I just wanted to make, Steve, the piece that I gave you, that I forwarded to you, this fact sheet, which talks about their work, if you could get that out to the commission to read beforehand, because I think it would be really nice. And I think it dovetails into really going back to our strategic plan. It's July. We need to take on some of those other issues, some of the other things we want to get done in a positive way looking forward. This really talks about the a bridge in Credit Island, but what I think is it's even more important when you read this is really about the sustainability of our river. It talks about that the slough is really a harbor for Asian carp, and that this area, and they call it the Dam 16, so below 15, this pool of 16 is kind of the battleground for Asian carp. And then they also talk about how the slough is filled in and all the things that we've lost, the mussels and everything. This is an opportunity to listen to this and not look at it just like, we need a flood and do we put asphalt back on this or not? This is really a bigger issue. This is really, what do we want the river to be there, and how do we want it to work? And we have sustainability in our title, and this is a way, I think, to get everyone who's an environmentalist kind of on board and psyched up of what could happen here. So I'm really looking forward to his presentation, and then us talking about what how we would like to be a part of that.
Thank you. Another item that we have all been very eagerly awaiting is going to begin to get underway, at least the designing of it and the bid letting, and hopefully late October. This is the Freight House deck. So we're still in the early stages, but it is my hope, and what I'm working feverishly on is to try before the first snow flies to have that project wrapped up so that we go into winter at least. And actually, the later we go without walking that fine line, the better, as far as not wanting to be too disruptive to business, but still not being able to miss our season, our window for the season. So late October in all likelihood is what we're looking at this stage. And then lastly, kind of connecting in with an item for the election of officers, the chairman has asked for basically some bylaw, not so much clarification, but some addition. So I'm happy to be directed to bring back next meeting for your consideration, if you're so inclined, a change which would kind of speak to a succession plan for the officers. So something along the lines, I don't know, a 2 or 3 year, maybe, a lot of times nonprofits do something where you're incoming chair as vice, and then you're maybe immediate past. I mean, we can decide to do a vice to chair expectation or a vice to chair to immediate, so that there's some continuity. But right now, our bylaws only suggest a yearly election of officers of the 3 positions: chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. And so with your, if you're so inclined, at the next meeting, I would bring back some verbiage for your review. And then the following meeting, according to our bylaws, is when that could be approved. So maybe a little direction in the next few weeks on if you want the 2 or the 3 year, the immediate past. Sometimes organizations do that, sometimes they don't.
So, Steve, I think that's an excellent idea, and I would even suggest maybe, bring us 2 different proposals,
Okay.
perhaps. One that maybe is, given, I think, sort of the number of meetings that we have, we don't meet an overly large number of times, I don't think. I would even be interested in seeing maybe it's a 2-year term for the chairman or something like that, because I do think that there's value in that continuity. But I do think having sort of a system where people, have the chance to sort of be in a seat where they're learning before they become chair, there's a lot of value in that. And perhaps the past chair, which is a person who's there, I think a lot of times is a great resource. I've been on a number of boards that have sort of a system like that, whether it's governance, vice chair, chair, past chair, or some variation of that. But I think there's a lot of value in looking at a couple of options that we could discuss then, sort of the merits of it, and come to a conclusion.
I'd be happy to prepare a couple, but any input that you want to share, please do so.
Carl?
Thank you. I was just about to say almost exactly the same thing, Kelly, and well said. Yes, a couple of different scenarios, and I'm not familiar with any city boards or commissions that have succession arrangements, but I'm familiar in private sector with that's rather common.
We will pioneer this territory, won't we?
Oh, excuse me. Forgive me. Well, we've always been very unique.
There we go.
Up till.
So yeah, maybe more than just one or it's just if you could sample a different.
Some research on that and find
thanks, I appreciate it.
couple scenarios
different
that seem to be a fit. Obviously, in light of each of you have 6-year terms, having a couple-year officer term as opposed to doing it every year seems to make a lot of sense. So for
Bill?
continuity purposes. Come on.
Oh, wait. Any other discussion? Well, about the bylaws.
About the topic.
Well, or my staff report.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. Richard, you have anything?
evening, or afternoon, whatever. Hey, thank you, thank you. You got white hair too, so. I'm Richard Thomas, Chairman of the Park Advisory Board. I just had a few notes that from our last meeting. We had originally had a Park and Development Fund project to put a Ninja Warrior type playground down at Credit Island, but this spring, you know. So we voted, So Chad, the director, suggested moving it to Sunderbrook. Sunderbrook's got the same type of interested users, you know, with the off-road biking and stuff. So we voted, approved it that it should be moved to Sunderbrook. And Credit Island, we'll see, you know, if we put another one in down there or not. Kind of up in the air. We had a flood report. We're going to try and get down there and look at Credit Island as soon as the road's passable and they got all the trees moved. So hopefully sometime in August we can get down there and look. We don't really know anything more than you do probably at this point. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Red Hawk, the golf course, and the clubhouse. A vendor has become interested in leasing that to make a restaurant at Red Hawk, which is, does everybody know where Red Hawk is? Yeah. Okay. Pine Street. Yeah. Some people, you know.
For guys like us playing. Valley Golf.
Used to be Valley, oh boy, yeah, a few years back. Yeah. So that's good. We can get more use out of that building. You know, it sits empty all winter basically, so this is great. I just had a couple of notes. First of all, this presentation by the Corps of Engineers, is he going to come talk to us too? Do you know?
We're asking him to come.
We're asking him to come.
We invited him.
The Riverfront.
Well, who? I didn't know anybody at the Corps was even looking at that. That's why it caught me by surprise. I'm like, I hadn't, you know.
Same here.
Same here?
Yes.
Well, I suggest that I will ask all my members to attend the August meeting.
Thank you.
Save the guy from having two presentations.
Yeah.
I just think, you know, we should be included in this.
That's a good idea. And that'll, we need that. That'll be our joint meeting for.
So I will email them, and I will also email Bob Peppers.
Yeah.
Good.
Because otherwise, you know, Peppers should be here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
He's heart and soul down there. So, I'd be interested to hear what this guy's got to say and what he's got for a price tag.
We were all a little surprised. I mean, Core doesn't just show up.
No.
They work
No.
on stuff for a long time before they show
Yeah.
the cards. So
This is at a fact sheet level
Okay. Well,
discussion.
I'm sure that.
That means that this is like the most preliminary. And
Right.
right now, there's not a sponsor. So if there's not gonna be a sponsor, it won't really move forward.
Yeah. If there's no.
Involved in the state, DNR has been involved in the preliminary because it's really focusing on the environment of the river.
Right.
The wastewater treatment plant, effluent, I mean, it's really discussing that whole pool of 16.
Yeah.
The bridge is just one aspect of the.
Yeah, I understand. We talked about that. So much flow has to go down there for the wastewater plant. We talked about that 10 years ago, and nobody's ever seen it in writing. I don't know. Somebody said it was there someplace, but I forget who the director down there was 10 years ago, but he didn't know anything about it. And so that was all I had. Is there any questions?
Well,
we've also talked about
the silt in the slough and all of that. We've talked about that for 10, 12 years, for forever. We were talking about it in the 80s.
Yeah.
This could very well be the kind of opportunity, longer term, to resolve that and to improve the health of the river.
Sure. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
If they, I just, you know, shake my head at the money. You know, if they can come up with federal funds for some type of environmental, you know,
I'm in for a buck.
yeah.
Thank you,
And-
Richard. Thank you.
I was just going to
Steve,
add
you-
that I'm happy to send out an invitation to join us to the Parks Advisory Council. I'll do so tomorrow, so I can at least explain it a little bit more. Okay.
Coordinate with Chad on it.
Yeah, Chad's aware of this, so yes, I will.
Kyle, do you have anything from city council? Public with business? Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
As a member of the Friends of Veterans Memorial Park, I thought I'd give you all an update on a new development that we have on the Veterans Memorial Park, since it's on the riverfront. We had donations from individuals and a few groups or companies, enough money to show them that we were doing something in the Veterans Memorial Park, but not enough money, obviously, to go to phase 2. That's a whole nother level of financing and funding. But we wanted to show the donors that we did have that we are doing something there. And so our Friends Committee ordered a stone. It's about 6 feet. We got it from Art Monument Stone. It's up on Locust Street, right across from the old Circle Tap. You know where that is. And we got 2 quotes. We got another one from Moline Monument. And the one on Art Stone was way lower, so I was happy that we kept it in Davenport. But we ordered a stone. It's about 6 feet wide. It's about 5 feet tall. It's granite. It has a polished granite star on top, which the top point is about 5 feet tall from the ground. It has been ordered. It's being engraved in Minnesota right now. In communication with Chad Dyson, the director of Davenport Parks and Rec. We've picked a location where it's going to be placed in the Veterans Memorial Park. And Zach is obviously privy and part of this whole process as well. And as of right now, according to Chad, he's hoping that we can install this monument the week of August the 5th. So depending upon exactly when this will be shipped from Minnesota, this large stone, and developing, and also depending upon the foundation that will be built by the city for this monument to be placed on. But we're looking at right now August 5th, the week of sometime, to place this really, really nice. It'll have the 5 military emblems on it, a POW emblem in the middle, and some large engraving. It's really a nice addition to the park. And if you are on Facebook, you could just type in Friends of Veterans Memorial Park, and you should bring up. We have a page on Facebook, and you'll be able to. I've posted a picture of what this monument looks like on Facebook, and so you can get an idea what it looks like. But I just want to give you a heads up that once we get this in place, then we will get the press involved and have a ceremony to let the people know that their donations went towards something positive. It wasn't just a donation that got pigeonholed somewhere, but we actually did something with their donations. And we're going to have a I don't know what you call it, a post or a plaque next to this monument with the names of the donors on it so that they know who they are, and we appreciate their support. So just want to give you a heads up that that's going on at the Veterans Memorial Park.
Thank you, Bill. So anybody from the public with comments? 5-minute limits.
I'm going to set my, bear with me for a second. I'm going
You
to
don't have
set.
to do that, Bill. I'll
I know, but it'll also.
I'll keep track.
I can pace myself a little bit there too. So, okay. So the things that I'm Bill Handel. I'm an architect, retired from Nashville. You may have addressed you in the past. But the things I'm going to talk about today on our riverfront are these items. I'll try to be as briefly as I can. I'll be just running through these very fast. The train tracks, Perry Street that was mentioned earlier, our freight house, actually a larger thing, the Davenport Farmers Market, also known as the Freight House Farmers Market, the Union Station Visitor Center, and that's probably enough for right now. Train tracks as Dee Bremer said in the past, I mean, right now, our vision off of River Drive, if you're in a sedan, good portions of River Drive in front of the Figgy, farther to the west and east, you wouldn't know there's a river there at all. Maybe you have a better view in an SUV, but I think that is something that we had, and if they're not going to move the tracks, we need to figure out some way to allow, at least for some portion of River Drive in the downtown area, to be elevated so that that people can see that river. And it could very well be that to do that and do it right, we need not to just elevate River Drive by, say, 4 or 5 feet. We need to also raise the area between the tracks and River Drive. And I think that ought to be considered. Here's the thing, as I'm an architect and I look at how cities have grown and changed. In our city, in the 20s, it was still a growing city, and Peterson and others changed our riverfront drastically, filled in huge areas, created the best architecture with the Peterson Pavilion and other things. But we're kind of so far away from that because Davenport is just growing so slowly. And we just need to break that, I think. So what I'd like to have people think is do like St. Louis did when they built their arch. I'm challenging you to think of that. When the arch was built, they tore down, I think it's around 7 blocks by 7 blocks, nearly 50 blocks, probably twice as big as our downtown area that was right against the riverfront, to create that Jefferson Memorial Park. And what did they do? It flooded there. They filled that whole area. There were tracks through there. There were trains going through tunnels right there. And we can't even think about even raising River Drive 4 feet between Arsenal Bridge and Centennial Bridge, which I think is something we really ought to consider. And then raising it all the way down to the tracks. It's something that can be done. It's just fill. And it may not be the solution to our flooding problem. You still are going to probably have to pump because it'd be extremely expensive to add check valves to all our storm sewers. So we still maybe need to pump like we're doing in our HESCO barriers. But at least we'd have a functioning River Drive. Because right now, a quarter of our east-west streets are impassable, River Drive. It's absurd. The Freight House and the Farmers Market, it's great that you're here. I think what we're doing on the farmers market is commendable, but it doesn't, long-term, our farmers market doesn't work. The indoor market they're talking about is too small, it's cramped, it's the wrong it's the wrong location. You look at all the RGG plans showing all these thousands of people on our riverfront. We get thousands of people on the river, but on our riverfront, but it's over there at the farmers market. Farmers market, it's not tenable for it to be there in the long term. I challenge the people here to look at creating one of the best farmers markets in the country. And we're not doing it we can't do it where we are. Has anybody else, reflected that when we have all these 10,000 people who look toward our Sky Bridge, which is our signature element, and our Main Street landing, there's no one there. That Sky Bridge is vacant. I don't see silhouettes of anyone there. I think the farmers market needs to move somewhere, and I would say probably either on to 2nd Street between Harrison and Brady, and then taking Main Street up till from River Drive to 3rd, or create a flex space between the Union Station going all the way to the east, between the tracks and and River Drive. Then that would activate our riverfront in a way that the current RDG plan never will. So I'd like to challenge people to think harder about our farmers market. The Union Station, it's quite an asset to the city, but it was a train station. Where do I see trains? The only place I see trains is that crummy boxcar in front of Freight House. And it's on the, if you think about it, I mean, I didn't even think about it for the longest time, even an architect and a Davenport resident. That's on the wrong side. The freight cars were always on the south side. And on the north side, on River Drive, that's where the trucks were loading. I mean, why don't we put it the way it's supposed to be? Get that stupid boxcar in front of the Union Station. Maybe we get another one. Maybe we get a caboose that little kids love. Maybe even some kind of an engine. I mean, and create a small railroad museum in that building. That's the kind of thing we need. We don't need necessarily to get a landscape architect to come with something next to our Union Station. And then the freight house itself, right now, with the freight house indoor space at the end, it may be fine when we've got a farmer's market, but on Friday nights and Saturday nights, when the freight house ought to be jumping with all kinds of places to see and do, that whole area is just dead. You know, there ought to be, so it's the wrong place for it. Either we build a new building in the parking lot there, to serve the indoor needs of the freight house, or we take the Union Station, just like they did in Eastern Market in D.C., and maybe we add on to that too with some kind of a nice addition, or we take that space. If we go to Second Street, we take that space between the Putnam and the Parker building that's been vacant for a long time. Use that for the indoor space. I want to
Thank you, Bill.
have you think about all those things, and lastly, I think we need to think hard and not make it the last thing we talk about, to create a ferry service between Rock Island and Davenport. And the RDG plan, the only thing that they showed one of their frames, and toward Rock Island, it looked like the Pacific Ocean. I think we need to if we build bridges between, not literally a bridge, between our city and Rock Island, lots of good things will come to bear.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Somebody has a light on over. Oh, Richard?
I just had a question about Veterans Park. How's the dredging coming along? Where are they dumping it at? Where are they going into it at?
Well, Zach can probably answer that better than I, but it's basically way far back. And actually, that's a good thing. We're happy to have extra fill, because our next plan that Zach and I talked about before this meeting started is our REAP grant proposal, which is going to be happening in the fall. It will be to grade that whole area and get rid of all the volunteer trees and bushes and junk that's grown up over the years there, and grade that out to make it look, in fact, like it is going to be something. And so that extra fill, and then that fill that they've dredged out, would be used as a topsoil, which could then be seeded and so forth to make it look much nicer than it does now.
I'm happy to answer this. It is winding up likely tomorrow as far as the dredging activity, and it has been very helpful to have this additional fill placed there. It's basically off of River Drive on the downstream side, so not off of Marquette, Richard, but off of River Drive, sort of the back non-public entrance. I don't know how else to describe it, but in an area that it's needed and very positive to be placed.
It's a good thing, yeah. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious. I talked to the backhoe operator the other day down there, and I was just curious where they were getting into the park,
It's off of River Drive. There's a gate that goes in off of River Drive into the east end of the Veterans Memorial Park.
The sewer tunnel and that, kind of in that area.
I don't know about the sewer tunnel. It's just a gate there, right on the curve, right before you go under the railroad bridge. If you're headed eastbound on River Drive, it's before you go under the railroad bridge. There's a gate that goes into the park there.
It's all been coordinated with Public Works as well, so I mean they're ensuring that the placement is where it needs to be.
Okay, brings us to election of officers. Do we have a nomination?
Well, I had a chance to talk to most of the people who are not either retiring executive board members or proposed executive board members, since I presumed everybody who knew they were being nominated for executive board was probably going to be okay with it. And it seemed that everybody was okay with it. So I take great pleasure in retiring as your secretary for, I can't recall the number of years I've done this, Steve, but it's more than 3 probably.
We're closer to like 8.
And I take great pleasure in nominating my friends and colleagues for the following positions: Dee Brummer for Chair of the Riverfront Improvement Commission, Kelly Grubbs as Secretary of our commission, and Kelly Grubbs as Vice Chair. Sorry about that, Kelly. We'll give you you're moving up that succession ladder already. and Ryan, new guy, gets the position is nominated for the position of secretary. So the slate is Brummer chair, Grubbs vice chair, Reed secretary. So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second Carl's motion.
Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the slate is recommended by Carl Rumberg, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right,
Well, congratulations to one and all.
congratulations.
And-
Do a good job. I know you will.
I would like to take this opportunity, Pat, to thank you for the 2 years. I also, for your insight and leadership over those 2 years, you took us from a brand new body to one that I think that we're working pretty well and understanding the procedures. We have a great strategic plan, and so I'm very happy that you also have the idea of succession planning. So I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I think we're growing, and you've been a big part of that. And Carl, oh my goodness, scribe. The person of detail. We love your voice. So it's been very good for the last 2 years serving with you. So I'm looking forward to chairing. And at our next meeting, I think we should bring back our strategic plan and the elements that we have there and maybe talk about which ones we'd like to take up as another part of the meeting. So we should structure it where we can have the presentation, but then the commission can do its work. All right.
Thank you. And I don't think it would be fair to accept that accolade without giving a shout out to Steve Aarons, who actually is doing the minutes. My note taking is simply to verify that we're both doing it the same,
just
and
ghost write.
Steve is actually writing the narrative and submitting the documents. So thank you very much, to
Thank you for your honesty.
Executive Director Aarons.
For your honesty, Carl. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Or second. Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we adjourn.